Welcome to the Head Shepherd podcast. I'm your host, Mark Ferguson, CEO here at NextGen Agri International, where we help livestock managers get the best out of their stock. Before we get started, thank you to our two fantastic sponsors for continuing to sponsor this podcast. MSD Animal Health is perhaps better known as Cooper's Animal Health in Australia and for their Allflex range across the world, with a comprehensive suite of animal health and management products. Honiger is a one-stop shop for wool harvesting and animal fibre removal. The Honiger team have a deep understanding of livestock agriculture, backed by Swiss engineering and a family business dedicated to manufacturing the best. We are grateful to our sponsors for their support, helping us bring Head Shepherd to you each week. And now it's time to get on with this week's episode. Welcome back to Head Shepherd. You're with Ferg. Great to have you listening along as usual. Today on the show, we're going down the soil line. We've got Louis De Jaeger on to chat about a book he's written and what he's found as he's cruised around the world trying to understand agriculture, or I guess a sustainable agriculture. Interesting chat. We'll cover that more in a minute. Before we get into that, this week on our website, www.nextgenagri.com, we've released an article from Amy Lockwood on scoring udders so wet and drying udders, working at which ones have successfully reared a lamb. So a short article there from Amy on that. That'll be linked from the hub and up on the website. So have a look there. Also, just wanted to let people know that on this week, on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. NZ time, 5 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Western Australian time, we're doing a webinar on our Magnificent Maidens project, so the findings and the economic analysis from that project, wrapping that project up now. So you can jump on the hub and register for that event and listen along. We'll talk through the results of that project. We're doing the same again on Friday night, same time. So if you missed Wednesday or you're at footy training or netball training or something and can't get there, then we'll be doing the same on Friday. Again, register on the hub or get in touch. If neither of those times work, we will be recording it and putting the recording on the hub and sending it around on socials as well. So lots of opportunities there to get the latest from that project, which has been an MLA PDS that's now wrapping up. Yeah, so recommend you jump on there. Love to have a chat there. We'll get on with this week's show. So yeah, Louis De Jaeger's written a book, Save Our Soils, SOS. We talk through a range of things, get a bit deep into biomes of gut biomes and soil biomes and stuff that I'd probably struggle to understand properly, but I think Louis is coming from it from the right angle. He's keen to understand agriculture and keen to understand the whole system and goes in with the right approach. So interested in your thoughts on this one. A bit different than our usual stuff, but a good opportunity to maybe just to challenge the way we think about things a little bit. And you'll hear me struggling with some of the concepts, but definitely agreeing with lots of them. So yeah, we'll get on with that interview now. Welcome, Louis De Jaeger, to Head Shepherd.
Well, super glad to be here.
Excellent. Thanks, Louis. It's late where you are, so we'll get right into this. And thanks for coming on. It's we don't often talk soil on Head Shepherd, but we have before, so it's a good opportunity today to dig into the basics, or right down into the floor of any production system. Is where it all starts, is in the soil or in the dirt. We might start with a bit of your background. Your profile says food, forest and landscape designer, filmmaker and author, which all sounds pretty impressive. How did you end up doing what you're doing?
Well, I think it's really a passion for all living things, mostly for all humans, actually. I just love what we as humans created on this planet. We created so much beauty, love the culture, love films we're making, music, love the friendship, the love, the amazing food that we create. And in order to keep us as a human species on this planet, we have to take responsibility for maintaining our ideal habitats. And in our ideal habitat, we still need soil to survive. So if you look at most world problems, it always come back to a healthy soil. And so I'm a very pragmatic man. If I want to solve problems, I always want to look, so what's like the root cause? And a lot of root causes of problems is just like an unhealthy soil.
Interesting. So you spent 12 years researching soil health across the globe. Was there a moment when you sort of worked out that soil health could be a game changer for farmers struggling for profitability? I guess most of our listeners are farmers out there trying to battle the elements and stay profitable. And obviously they understand that their land and their soil is fundamental to that. How did that journey roll?
Yeah, so it's super interesting to see actually that when farmers start to invest more energy, more money, more knowledge, getting knowledge about the soil, the more profitable they actually become. Because the soil is like this type of natural machine. Once you kickstart it and you give it the good fuel, then it starts and work on itself. So what we've been learned for the last decades, and I went to farmer school as well, and what I learned there is, well, actually soil is a dead medium, and you just like add fertilizer to it, then plants will grow, the plants will get sick, then you add pesticides to it, and then you go on this cycle forever and ever until the end. And that's the old way of thinking. That's the old paradigm. The new research, and farmers are showing it on their land, but also like academia is studying it as well. And that's row cropping, but that's the same with grazing. It's the same principles. And they're actually, instead of treating the soil like just a dead medium you just have to add things to, you look literally to the tiniest life in the soil, and that can be earthworms, that can be nematodes, but also bacteria and fungi. And once you team up with bacteria and fungi, and earthworms and nematodes and arthropods, they actually do the work for us. I'm an ecologist, but I'm also an economist. For me, I'm a business owner. I know how important it is to be profitable, and one of the most important things in running a business is, well, why pay for it if you can get it for free? So why plow or till the earth if you have earthworms tilling the earth? Why give extra water to your plants if you can have fungi that make plants' roots actually 100 times longer? It's amazing. It's like my arm here. I want to grab a good beer, but I can't grab it because my arm is too short. Imagine if I can make my arm like 100 times longer to get a beer from my fridge. I can't do it, but the plant, it can do it by just teaming up with fungi. And this way, I know farmers who have not been given water for 3 months during a drought without a single drop of rain, just because they invested in this soil life. They created the best conditions for this fungi to team up with the plant roots. And like all the farmers around him were like getting crazy and trying to get water, but they were not allowed from the government to take any more water from the river or from the ditches because they were drying up. And that farmer was like, whew, there is not a drought problem. There is a fungi problem. You don't have enough fungi in the ground. My plants just can get really deep thanks to these fungi. You just like treated your soil like a dead dirt, and now you're screwed because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's short-term droughts where plants or that having a healthy soil will get you out of some droughts, some extended and won't save you anyway. But I guess that's setting up for those shoulder seasons where soil is drying out. But if you've got the right soil structure, then you can obviously plants can access that moisture for a bit longer. I guess what we see in ag a bit is kind of people have these two kind of polar opinions, one being sort of regenerative and one being traditional, for want of another word. Whereas in theory, what we see out there is kind of a whole continuum of people that, like, everyone wants to look after their soil, probably sometimes have maybe been misled or haven't understood how to do that properly, but there's sort of no one out there trying to ruin their soil. It's probably just...
No, of course. Yeah.
It's an understanding, and it's interesting. Your book argues that we need to save our soils or we die. So we will talk about your book. So SOS, Save Our Soils, and we'll cover that off in the show notes for sure. And we're going to sort of bounce around it anyway. But yeah, Save Our Soils or we die. You're really interested in the link between human health and soil health. It's obviously that will make most people sit up and listen in their seats.
yeah, most definitely. And for me, it was really, well, my question always was, well, how can we make people care about soil? How can we make people care about farming? And how can we also make people invest in good food? Because in a lot of countries, farmers are not super much appreciated for all the things they're giving to us. In my opinion, farmers are the true heroes. they are the real heroes, because you can't go to work without having to eat something. And who is giving you food? Well, it's farmers, obviously. And one of the sayings that I really love by Hippocrates is, he says that your food will be your medicine, or your medicine will be your food. And for me personally, and that's what one of the biggest discoveries that I made during my quest around the world is, the farmer is actually the pharmacist of the future. And there is a huge link between soil health and human health. You want me to go really in depth about the connection between the soil creatures and the gut? Do you want me to do like a little deep dive and nerd out a little bit? Or
yeah. Most of our listeners are nerds, so
right.
I want to be nerds. So let's go there. Yeah.
All right, then I'll go there. Because the first time I heard that, I was like, no, that cannot be true. That's a bridge too far. I like couldn't believe what I was hearing. So happy to share that. So it all starts with plants. First the earth was one big rock. There was no soil. Soil didn't exist. The little mosses came on the rocks. They formed connections with fungi and microorganisms to colonize these rocks and grinded these rocks to like little rock dust. The mosses and the little plants that grew there died, and together they had like organic material. They had this rocky material, and together that formed the first soil. And little by little it grew. More and more plants died, animals died, and that formed the soils like we have it today. And that was all because of the plant connection between the plants and the fungi and bacteria living there. And I often compare it to pancake baking. It's a very strange relation, but what does this do plants?
We've had beer covered, so pancakes and
yeah, well, Belgium is a big beer country.
Yeah.
Pancakes not that big, but still we have good pancakes. My grandmother makes good ones. So what do pancakes have in a mix? So we all know how photosynthesis works. It's like these solar panels getting electricity from the sun, I call it, and then you have this little factory going on, and a very crazy things happen. The plant takes CO2 from the air and water from the soil, and water, something you see every day, together with CO2, something you can't see together, it creates sugars. And that's crazy. Something, water you see every day with CO2, it's sugars. And then the plants also fart, and these farts are oxygen, and we inhale plant farts, basically. So, so the plants, they create sugars and actually create all the ingredients that pancakes have. What do you have in pancakes? You have eggs, you have fats, you have sugars, and they create like pancake dough to grow for themselves, but they also give it with their roots to the soil life. And why do they do that? Because plant roots cannot access all the nutrients in the soil, right? We all had those soil reports that say, well, it's like inaccessible phosphorus or inaccessible this or that, and I like to compare it with like canned foods. So imagine you're in a bunker, you want to survive, you all have like this beautiful canned food in front of you, canned ravioli, but you don't have this can opener. We've all been there. And it's the same with the plant roots. They can't open these canned foods, this canned phosphorus or canned whatever in the soil. So they need a can opener. So the plant is smart. What do you do if you don't have a can opener? Or you can get a knife and try to open it, or you can knock on the door of your neighbor and ask for a can opener, right? So the plant doesn't have a knife, so knocks on the door of the neighbor, actually throws a party, bakes pancakes for the entire neighborhood, and says, "Okay, come and eat my pancakes." Of course, it's not real pancakes; it's called root exudates. So sometimes up to 40% of the plant pancake mix it gives as a present to the soil via the roots exudate. And so the little soil creatures come, the bacteria, the fungi, and if you go to a party, what do you bring? Beers. Voila. You bring a present, and that's exactly what these fungi and these bacteria do. They say, all right, thanks for the great pancakes, here you are, a opened can of ravioli. So the plants are super happy because now they finally can eat the ravioli without having the cans, and that's actually a very nice relationship they have. And these bacteria and fungi, they're super happy because these plants are like constantly pumping in this pancakes into the soil. Pancake mix, of course, that's carbon, that's sugars, exudates. And the crazy thing is, plants actually can't communicate with the soil life, and they can, for example, one day bake waffles with the same ingredients, a little bit different, and say, okay, and with the waffles, I get another type of party guest that brings us, instead of potassium, more phosphorus or whatever. And like the chemical composition of this the root exudate attracts different kind of bacteria, or even a subspecies of that bacteria. So it's an amazing language they speak together. So imagine you are a soil fungi or a soil bacteria, and you get this free food from these plants. What are you going to do if an intruder comes? Then you're going to say, hey, guy, screw you. And I'm going to fight you because that's my food source. I'm not going to share my pancakes with the bad guys, you know? I'm not going to let you kill my pancake baker, you know? And so they also protect the plants. Sometimes you can see it. If you pull out the plant root, you can see that this plant root really has a sock around this root. And it's like a protective sock almost. And so they give food and they protect the plant. So that's like pesticides already present, and that's also fertilizers also present in the soil. So it's this beautiful relationship, you could say. You could say it's a friendship, but you could also say it's a mafia, right? A soil mafia, because the plant bacteria say, well, as long as you give me protection money, I'm going to protect you, you know?
Yeah.
So that's what happens with the plants. But then now, what's the connection with human health? Because that was the question you asked me, right?
Yeah. I was thinking pancakes must be the connection. But...
yeah, true. And so first I heard that story while researching, talking to farmers who are like literally farming this way, but also with scientists who confirmed these stories. And then of course I asked, yeah, but what's then the connection with human health? Because that's beautiful, this connection. And then it was actually David Montgomery, I think, who wrote a very nice book, The Hidden Half of Nature, about this. And he said, well, imagine you take a plant root, it's like a grocery bag, you put your hand inside of it, and you take this plant root inside out. What do you become? You know the answer? Plant root inside out.
No idea. Sock.
A sock, kind of. It's actually a human gut, and that was for me very crazy the first time I heard it. And one of I actually don't remember who said it to me, or like tried to shock me a little bit. And he said, "Well, Louis, you are not a human. You're not human." I was like, okay, why not? And he said, "Well, Louis, you exist of more non-human cells than human cells." I was like, that can't be true, right? And then it was actually, then a little bit later we had this COVID pandemic where we had to put on hand shells and kill every germs on our hand or whatever. But that's actually super stupid, because we are like, half of our cells are germs, are bacteria, are fungi. And I said, yeah, but where do they live? All these, I don't see them. And they say, well, okay, of course, your entire body is covered in it. You have the same sock over you as just like a plant root. You already have a hand shell on your hands, like these natural little creatures living on your hand. The same creatures that live on plant roots, but also on plant leaves, because the phyllosphere also is protected. They also have exudates on the leaves of plants. So you, instead of having to spray foliar pesticides, you already have natural creatures protecting it. So we have it on our skin as well. So another connection with the plants. And we have it in our guts. And that's where it really becomes interesting, because it's like, we being cavemen or primates, even we just like put everything in our mouths, like leaves, eggs, worms, berries, nuts, whatever, and they were all covered with microorganisms. And they said, well, look, if I can stay in your body for free and you'll feed me, I will extract more B12 for you, I will extract more iron for you, and I will also protect you. And our ancestors said, okay, good deal, you can keep on living in my body. And before we knew it, our entire gut now, every inch, you have like an entire different city full of these microorganisms. So they help to digest our food. It's like opening the cans that we are eating. It's the same principle. And it's also protection, because our guts are actually full of little holes, and these holes need to be lined with like a liner. And it's actually bacteria that are lining all the holes we have in our guts. And if we have a problem with this bacteria, the good bacteria, and they're gone, we have little holes in our guts, little perforations, and then we have a leak. And then, for example, have a leaky gut. And there it gets interesting, because a lot of chronic diseases actually start in our guts. A lot of chronic diseases start with a bad gut microbiome, so with not enough of these little creatures. And then people think, well, why am I getting sick? Well, it's because you don't eat good food. And so what's happening, if you spray pesticides on your food, then all these helpers, this little soil mafia or leaf mafia, all these helping microorganisms on these leaves or on your apples or whatever, they die. And then if you eat it, you eat sterile food, for once. But secondly, you also eat pesticides or fungicides. And these one actually kill the fungi in our body that is making us not only healthy, and that's another thing I learned, that it's also making us happy. And that was crazy, because I heard that 90% of the serotonin, our happiness hormone, is created in our guts. So it's our gut that's actually making us happy, because we have this.
I've known that for years, mate.
Voila. Because of the brain-gut connection. And then you have this full circle, and it's like, okay, well, if you're unhealthy and if you're unhappy, it's because you eat shitty food.
So if we keep that connection rolling, so obviously we're talking, well, I guess we're talking the microbes, but we're also talking nutrient density, are we, in terms of
definitely
better soils, some of eating the right foods, eating whole foods means you're eating more nutrient dense foods and less just straight sugars.
Very true, because if you give artificial fertilizer to a plant, then it only eats those fast foods, and the few nutrients you're giving. Maybe it's like 5 elements of the periodic table you're giving, or even less, but they need all the periodic table. They need to have it all, and they don't have this beautiful relationship with these microorganisms to also give the micronutrients to the food. So we're actually eating more impoverished food and less nutrient dense foods. And one day, and like I know a lab in Boston who's working on it. They're creating like a very cheap sensor to check how nutrient dense that food is. And one day that will be so cheap that all the food will be tested for that. And then it'll be like, okay, but this kilograms of grains is like not the same as this kilograms of grains. Now it's the same, even if the one is like super nutrient dense and the other one isn't. There is no difference.
So, I mean, we've seen examples of people go down, I guess, an organic or regenerative line, and then we see production drop in some of those cases. And I've heard people say that you don't need to add nutrients to the soil because it's all coming from the sun. And the whole, I guess, the concept that you've just gone through. But the reality is we're exporting nutrients. If we're taking hundreds of kilograms of beef and wool and things off our land, then we are exporting nutrients to the cities, essentially. So we have to replace those nutrients. Are you in the camp where you think that we can't add any extra nutrients, or is it how we add them, or what we add, or how we bring all that together?
Well, that's what you learn at school, right? When I was getting soil classes or fertilizer classes, I remember and say, well, if you take something out, you need to put something in. It's very logical. But then I met some crazy people, farmers, but also professors, and they say, yeah, Louis, well, that's what you learn at school, but that's wrong. Like, that's wrong? Tell me. And they say, in physics or in chemistry, it's like you take something out, you have to put something in. But the crazy thing about biology is that it's an endless supply. And then they reminded me of our Earth being just one big rock. There was no soil. It didn't even exist. Plants just created soil out of nothing, out of the mother stone of the mother material that was there. And then you have two choices, or you like take the organic waste from the cities and bring it back to the farm, but that's logistically impossible. And then what I learned was that they say, well, you have to grow fertility on your site. I was like, grow your fertility on site? And say, yeah, just have the plants create the fertility by extracting the nutrients that are not accessible because they're still locked up in those proverbial cans. And secondly, a lot of it is actually by plants that keep on injecting the soil via these exudates. And I visited some farms who did that in reality. For example, a farmer that I really like, it's in United Kingdom, in England. But you have farmers all over the world doing it. He started out in a really shitty soil. And he never even added animal manure, no chemical fertilizer. The only thing he did was feeding the soil life. He said, look, I'm actually a soil life farmer. And he just gives I think every 3 years, he gives like half a centimeter of wood chips to the soil. And then it's just enough to activate this motor I was talking about, activate the soil life to create fertility itself. He also uses green manures, and not just one plant, but a couple of botanical families in a mix together. And that's enough to keep on growing fertility. And universities from all over the world have been also researching his farm, because he's a very down-to-earth guy. He's not a scientist, or he kind of is a scientist, but with his hands in the ground. And universities were like, oh my God, how is that possible? You've been farming here for more than 30 years, no input, but your quality of the soil has gone up drastically, and has been heavily producing vegetables, which are like the most demanding crops you can have for your soil. And it's just by, like you say, growing fertility on site. So which camp are you in? It's not that I'm in one camp or the other. I just see that it's true. And yeah.
How does that translate to someone who's in 250 mil, 300 mil rainfall, where, I mean, soil carbon is directly linked to how much rain you get. Mm-hmm. And we've seen people grow soil on putting a center pivot irrigator, and you grow soil because you add moisture, and then the microbes do better and the plants do better and all that sort of stuff, and you start breaking down those rocks. But in reality, a lot of our dryland farmers are doing have changed their practices a lot to go no-till or very reduced till, so you are creating the best soil environment you can, but you're still taking out, in some of those cases, 6, 7, 8 tonne of grain per hectare. And these are ancient soils that aren't starting with a massive nutrient base. And I accept that some of our fertiliser has been locked up. So if you get that right, you can bring that back to be plant available. But at the end of the day, I guess the question is, how translatable is stuff in European soils that are a lot younger than what we might be dealing with in Australia and and New Zealand, to some of the younger soils in New Zealand, but different soils. And we've seen production drop if people. Like, I've seen examples that are exact opposite of what you're saying, I suppose. So I'm interested to understand what you saw as you cruised around the world.
Yeah, no, it's really true what you say. And the more drier you get, the harder it gets, no question asked. And of course, the theory is very simple, but the practice is super hard. So, like the way I'm talking about it, it seems super simply, but it isn't. It's hard work, and you never get it right on the first time. But even in very dry lands, I've seen examples of water catchments. I haven't seen that example with my own eyes, but it's an example that I really love from Australia. P.A. Humans, you probably know him, who invented the human plow, who created contour plowing with a special kind of plow, and he uses water catchment areas to catch every drop of rain you get on your soil. Because a lot of the time in dry areas, you do have precipitation, but because of the way we've been managing land in the past, or our ancestors did, it just runs off. And you actually already have so little water, but every drop that falls, it also runs off and you're left with nothing. But even in places where you only have 100 millimeters of rain, you can make it appear as if you would have 700 millimeters of rain by creating, for example, one big catchment area of 10 square meters to then water 1 square meter. And that 1 square meter, you can actually almost have the same effect as if it would rain 500 or 600 millimeters by getting all that water in this one place. Is it easy? No, it's not easy, but it is doable. And little by little, you can build soil this way. You can activate your soil organisms. And another interesting thing that I've seen is farmers that created more rain. And that's also a very counterintuitive thing that I first didn't understand and kind of didn't believe in at first. But by planting trees, you actually create rain. And that it took a while before I got it. But it's like we humans, we sweat, and if we sweat, it's water that becomes vapor. And because of this vapor, it rises into the air, and you create a low pressure zone, very small if your hand is sweating, for example. But if you plant trees, and you might need to kickstart those trees, or you start with very hardy trees, these trees create low pressure zones, and these low pressure zones attract clouds from the neighborhood. And I'm not talking about 10 square meters, right? I'm talking about bigger scale, of course. And that attracts rain, but trees also send spores into the air of fungi, and also little bacteria, also little particles, which form the nuclei of clouds passing by, that will condense to these little nuclei that these trees are sending out, that will make it rain. A very extreme example of this, which is not dry land at all, but it's the Amazon rainforest, is that they're one in every 2 drops of rain that falls down almost is created by a tree, not by the sea. It's literally a tree that created the cloud, and it fell down again. And if you would remove all the trees, the Amazon would actually become a savanna. And then you could say, yeah, but the Amazon, it's super wet. Yeah, it's wet because there are so many trees. If you cut down the trees, it becomes super dry. And that's what's happening right now. We're cutting down the trees at an alarming rate. Was 20% is cut down. If we reach 25% of clearing, then the Amazon will become like a negative spiral, and it will become a dry land, because the trees create these flying rivers, and that's something that we can do. People have been doing it in China, in Africa, and I even heard some stories in Australia as well of places where they planted these huge forests, and they literally created more rain. So there are all these tactics you can do, and of course these things, they cost a lot of energy, they cost a lot of money, they cost a lot of mental space, and that's a thing that a lot of farmers simply don't have. And that's why I'm always super pissed at people that say, yeah, but the farmers, they can do it, but they're not doing it, blah blah blah. But I'm saying, yeah, look, so a lot of farmers are in big debt, or just don't have a couple of $100,000 to put in some trees in the land, or to create some swales, or to create some ponds, or sometimes it's even illegal to do so in some cases. And for that, we need a transition, and that's the food industry needs to do something for that. The consumer need to be educated for that, and of course, the government also needs to implement those things. We can't put all these pressures on farmers to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I guess the statement is here: if to be in the green, you have to be in the black. You have to be making money to be able to invest in. And most farmers we work with are investing in different ways in protecting their landscapes, and taking up a combination of, I guess, the principles you're talking about, plus conventional agriculture, and bringing them together in the way that they see best suits their enterprises. And I think there's lots of really good examples of people sort of grabbing ideas from lots of different academics, because let's face it, academics don't agree, and bring them together, which suits best. Which I think, and I guess in where I sit anyway, there's a happy space somewhere in the middle where we do have to look after soil health. We do have to add nutrients from time to time because we're taking them out.
Yeah, of course. Sometimes you do need to do it, because to get to that point where you don't need to put it, it takes a lot of time, and Rome is not built in one day. We all also say a lot. So
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's an ideal world and there's a path towards it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we've seen examples of probably going off the rails on both ends of that spectrum.
Definitely.
I guess you talk about, I guess our consumers needing to understand that farmers aren't the problem; they're part of the solution. Is that? And we always talk about farmers need to be better storytellers, which they don't have time. But I guess is that why you got into filmmaking and as try to tell the story for farmers, or what have your films been focused on?
Yeah, no, definitely. So my actual initial goal was to become a farmer myself, because I saw all these beautiful farms across the world, and I was like, okay, I want to become a farmer myself and show how it's possible to do things differently. And then I had two issues. One issue is where I grew up in Belgium, it's $100,000 per hectare of lands, so around 50K per acre. So that's incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And I don't come from a wealthy family, so I couldn't just put $1 million down to buy 10 hectares, or let's say 25 acres, something like that. I just couldn't do it. And you need at least minimum 25 acres or 10 hectares.
Yeah.
So that was like not an option for me. And another thing I realized is that I don't have to start another farm that shows a nice example. There are so many good farms around that just don't get the attention they deserve. So I was like, okay, but instead of being another good farmer, I'm just gonna try to put these farmers in the picture. And also, I kind of became a farmer, but in a different sense, that I started a landscape design company where we design landscapes. We design farming landscapes. So we have a lot of clients who are new generation farmers who were fed up with their job as an executive or as a CEO or whatever, or regular job, and they say, okay, I'm going to move to the country, I'm going to become a farmer, and they need help. So we set up a lot of these farms, mostly regenerative farms, of course, all of them actually, and so I kind of became a farmer. But the biggest thing is we need to put farmers in the picture, and it's like you say, farmers need to be better storytellers. A lot of farmers are actually storytellers, but they don't get the microphone enough. And it's funny. I, for example, invited a farmer to a book release I had of another book I've written a couple of years ago, and one of the farms I interviewed, and I invited him to stage to talk, and afterwards he was like almost having tears in his eyes, and he was like, Louis, nobody ever put me on a stage, nobody ever was grateful for the things I did. You kind of gave me a very big present. I was like, huh? How cool is that? And now a couple of years later, he's like, in Belgium, has become one of the lighthouse farms, as I like to call them, where now people come and interview him, and they film him and say, oh, he's like one of the first no-till farmers, and now he's become like this famous farmer in the little farm bubble, of course, not for the general public, but and that's just so nice. And farmers are incredible storytellers, but we need to put them on a stage. So that's why I make films, I write books, to bring these stories to the world, to inspire people, and most and for all, give like the anti-story of doom and gloom. I hate doom and gloom. We're bombarded with doom and gloom stories every day. These farmers are showing they are the true warriors on the forefront of the climate revolution. They're showing, look, guys, I am storing so much carbon. Look, I started to implement agroforestry, and I'm literally cooling down the planet with every tree that I plant. I'm using regenerative farming, regenerative grazing, using animals grazing in a particular way to really rebuild the soil, which is also a very good strategy, of course, for if you have a dry land. These are the people at the forefront, and that's just incredible to show people nice stories. And I don't know how much agri bashing or farm bashing you have in Australia. Do you have that too?
Plenty of bashing.
Yeah. All right. It's the same in Belgium, and I think everywhere where people say, well, farmers are the problem, but they're not the problem. And that also brings a nice counter story to say, hey guys, look, these are the freaking heroes, you know. Let's pay them some respect.
Yeah, cool. Getting close to summing up. We'll talk about your book next, but I guess if you sort of have a look at your crystal ball, how do you see this playing out in the next 10, 15 years? What do you think? We've got rising, obviously climate pressures increasing. We've got input costs are really putting the heat on our farmers. We've got a little bit of a reprieve at the moment in terms of prices received, farm gate prices being pretty good, but we've been through a pretty tough few years.
Yeah.
What do you, I guess, how does this play out in your perfect world, or even what you think might happen? Yeah.
Well, one of the most interesting things is, and that's one of the reasons, is that we live longer now, so we can think longer term, is perennials. Most of our diets are based on annual food, plants that only live 1 year. When I was doing an internship at a farm, I was harvesting leek. It was really freezing, and when it was all harvested, I was like, okay, now I have a bare field, and we have to start all over again. And every time you have this bare field, you actually are degrading the land a little bit, because annuals in nature, they only exist when you have like a soil that has been where there has been like a major problem, or like it has been ruptured by something. In nature, only then annuals come in, and after a while, perennials like move in to take over the place of the annuals. They're like only the first step of the succession. They only taken like holes that has been opened by boar or by whatever. Yeah. And so perennials, they have deeper roots. They're much more climate resilient. They can grow higher, so you can have like true vertical farming. And you have, for example, trees that live hundreds of years or even thousands of years, and keep on producing. Also, in terms of food security, whatever happens, if we stop tilling the earth, walnut trees will keep on producing walnuts. Trees will keep on producing acorns. Whatever happens, they have like a secure food. The only problem is that these perennials right now, they don't produce as much as annuals. That's why we actually need both of them. And right now we're only focusing on annuals, and I'm 100% sure that in order to make our farming climate resilient, we have to have both. We have to have and perennials and annuals. And for this, agroforestry will really take up a much larger role into the future, because we need the sprinters, the annuals, but we also need the marathon runners with these deep roots, and both help each other, level each other out. The annuals are very high in production, but demanding on the soil. But they also produce fast. So imagine if you have only perennials, if you only have trees producing food, and you have a hurricane and they kill out your entire orchard, then you're screwed, Yeah, so that's why we also need annuals. So that's like one of the most important thing. And then grazing, of course, animals, we're going to have a huge shift. I don't see it possible anymore that we're going to have animals caged in who are going to be fed food that can be consumed by humans. That's just really a waste of energy, giving grains or maize or corn or soy to animals. That's one of the economically the most unsound thing you can do. We need animals in the right place. Cows, for example, or they need to graze. They're grazers, and they are part of the climate solution in places to rebuild the soil. So there we're gonna have to see a big shift that animals, we're still gonna have animals because they're important in the ecosystem, but in the right place and not beating human food anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting how human grade food getting fed to animals, and I think it's a really relevant point in New Zealand and big parts of Australia where it is very much grass based, some feedlot finish as well, but all the main production base out there is grass based, and that's the only way you can convert that electricity from the sun that you talk about into human food is through an animal in those big those landscapes. And excellent. So Save Our Soils, what's in the book? Why should we better give it a quick plug? What's the book about? Obviously, it covers all the concepts you've been talking about.
Yeah, well, one of the most important things actually for a lot of people is to understand the bigger connections. And like there's been a lot of academic research, but it's impossible to read that. what I did with that book is like combine all the farmer's knowledge with academic knowledge and explain it in a way that even a 10-year-old can understand it in really easy language, inspiring stories, because it's not about knowledge. First I thought that knowledge was going to transform the world, and there's of course a lot of knowledge in it, but the most important thing is actually empowerment. And what I like about all these stories of these farmers or professors that I met, or entrepreneurs in that atmosphere, is that they are rebels, kind of rebels. They're pioneers. They were told that it's impossible, but they said, "Screw that! I'm still gonna try it out, even if I fail." And they're not afraid to fail. They failed a lot of times. Actually, it's part of their success story. Going from failure to failure, but growing every single way, and that's true empowerment. Not to be afraid to fail, not be afraid that your neighbor is gonna laugh with you. That's a big one too, because they're probably laughing anyway with you, whether you're crazy or not. So don't, what other people think of you, that's not your problem. I love that saying. And just the farmers that literally changed the world. And a farmer that I really love, a farmer from Italy, he was growing organic apples, and his neighbor was spraying pesticides, and it has residue on his apple. So the control organism said, "Hey, sorry guy, but you're not organic anymore. There are pesticide residues." And he said, "Oh my god, how is that possible?" And then so he had two options: or leave his valley, and or not become organic anymore, and became regular. And he didn't want both, so he said, "Okay, no, I just don't want this pesticides coming from my neighbors." So they actually created a little group in the town to talk about the danger of pesticides, because there's more and more research that's showing how dangerous it is for pregnant women, for kids, but also for grown-ups, Parkinson's disease, whatever, our gut microbiome. If you can afford organic food, you have to buy it. It's just simple as that. The research now, it's just so complete that it's so bad for you, non-organic food. It literally kills you very slowly. And so he said, together with a pharmacist from the town, he just had some info nights where he talked about the dangers of pesticides. And they say, "Look, what are we going to decide as a village? Are we going to decide that our children grew up with having sometimes pesticides flying through the air, and they'll inhale it, and look, these are the risks? Or are we going to decide together to transform our entire village into organic?" The villagers said, "Okay, let's do it." And they did a vote, and they made their entire village, their entire valley, organic. And first, of course, there was a lot of protest by the other farmers, but that one farmer that initiated it said to me, "Look, Louis, I'm still at speaking terms with all the farmers. We came to an understanding." There was only one farmer who refused to speak to him anymore, which I kind of understand. He did something radical, but imagine it's only one farmer who's initiated that, and everybody is now better, because the villagers also decided, well, but then let's also buy food from and pay more for these organic apples, so the other farmers are also happy. And little by little you start an entire revolution. So if that farmer can do it, every farmer can do it. And that's it, empowerment.
Awesome, Louis. It's been great chatting. There's two questions we ask everybody, and I didn't give you a warning about these. So, but
oh my God.
The first one is, what's the last thing you changed your mind about?
What's the last thing I changed my mind about? I think about grazing and keeping animals. It's something that I've been struggling myself with a long time. I don't eat meat already for I think 12 years, because where I live, it doesn't make sense actually to grow animals, and also because I really love animals. But I changed my mind about that, because if you look at nature documentaries, you see that, or you look at nature, just everybody's eating everybody constantly. So I never had something against meat eating. I just didn't do it myself. But I really truly felt that it's okay to eat meat. But only if an animal lives in his natural habitat. For example, in Australia, these cows, it almost doesn't get more natural as that in most places. For that, it's okay. And also, coupled to that, what I changed my mind about is it might be possible that we're gonna have to have more grazers in Africa, for example, to regenerate the earth and import more of that food to Europe and to other places, and have actually a bigger food distribution system to regenerate Africa, to regenerate arid regions. And first, I was like instinctively a bit proposed to that because I didn't really understood that. But the more I learn about that, I think we have to invest more in that and research it more. About animals regenerating land and then eating meat that comes from there instead of meat that comes from factory farms, let's say.
Yeah, it's a really interesting answer. I'm glad I asked it. And I think it's so true. Like, grow animals where it naturally works, and grow crops where that naturally works. And we try to, I guess, put every system in every place, whereas there's just places of the world that are just naturally great for grazing, and others that are much more suited to annuals or row crops or trees or whatever. The final question is, who's the best human you've had the pleasure to learn from? And I'm sure you've had plenty on your journey. But
who's the best woman? The best human? Yeah, well, the first human that pops into my mind is an old lady that I once interviewed for a documentary. She was like, I think 92 or 94. And when I talked to her, so what did she do with her husband? She lived in a regular house in the city, like a working house. There was a lot of unemployment at that time. And she started an association where she learned the people who were unemployed how to grow their own food. Because a lot of people, they were like, a lot of factories closed and they had like this minimum income that the governments provided, but it was not enough. I think they could like only buy some very horrible food, so they were malnutritioned, not a lot of hope. And they started a little association by buying seeds in bulk, vegetable seeds, and then putting it in little bags and then selling it like without like almost zero profit, just enough to sustain themselves. And they had workshops. They also created like a 2,000 square meter garden, like a food forest, growing so much food on such little surface. And for the last 50 years, they've been spreading that knowledge. And the way they don't talk about riches, they had such a normal life. And they were so much giving. The only thing they did, or she did, together with her husband for the last 50 plus years, probably even 60 or 70 years, they were just giving. And when I was talking with her, I really innerly felt kind of bad, because I thought, oh my God, how am I ever going to be such a good person like her? How am I ever going to reach that level of kindness, of selflessness?
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, like even thinking about it, I get goosebumps, because like, how can you be such a good person? I was like, wow. So working on that.
Excellent, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to have a chat. I had no idea where this conversation was going to go, and I've really appreciated your absolute passion for food production and soil. It's infectious. So yeah, well done. And I hope plenty of people buy your book and you continue to get out there and tell the story.
Well, thank you so much. It's been super nice meeting you. Always love to have a chat with an Australian.
Australian living in New Zealand.
I actually have a glass of Foster's. I don't have the beer, but I do have the beer glass.
I'll send me your address. I'll send you a decent Australian beer.
Lovely.
Thanks, mate. All the best. You better get to bed.
Yes, I am. Bye-bye. Have a good night. Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, Louis. Thanks again to Heinegger, who are proud world leaders in the manufacturing and supply of professional sheep shearing and clipping equipment. Thank you to MNSD Animal Health and Norflex Livestock Intelligence. They offer an extensive livestock product portfolio focused on animal health management, all backed up by exceptional service. We thank both of these companies for their ongoing support of the Head Shepherd podcast.